Hello, it's Dawn Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be continuing my deck declutter and collection series, and we're going to be doing random baskets of decks that are sitting around my office because I need to get my space cleaned up so my husband can paint my walls. So I thought this was a great place to start for our next little segment in this series. Some of them are decks that I was playing with, and some of them are decks that I'm not really sure if I want to keep or not. That's not these. These were the ones I was playing with. I will try to mention why I threw each of these decks into these random baskets. So let's go ahead and jump in. The first little selection of decks that I want to talk about is this Witches. I don't know what these are called, what the series is called. It's just the Witches decks. And I'll go through each of them really quickly. I purchased all of these because they're nostalgia for me. This one not as much, but they're kind of like the bad good that it's a thing Krista and I talk about. They're decks that they're not done well in terms of the art, but they're it's bad good. It's so bad it's good. And I mean that in the best possible loving way, because for me, as I've mentioned before, although that might have been in member videos, but as I've mentioned before, this deck, this art style for me kind of harkens back to the days when I was learning to be a designer. And so it feels very 90s Photoshop to me. And so there's nostalgia there. This particular one is focused on moon phases. So that's pretty cool. I do like the idea of the moon phase decks. I work with moon phases here and there in my practice. Sometimes it's more prevalent than others. I tend to cycle through the things that I do in my practice in general. If you've been around here for a while, you've probably seen those cycles come and go. I do like the keywords. I like the moon associations. And the art is just, like I said, it's like old school digital collages. Just takes me back to that time and place in my life. So this one is the Witch's Wisdom. I think this might have been the first one. It's not the first one I got, but I think this might have been the first one. We're just going to take a quick peek through these because these really aren't going anywhere. Again, these are decks that I kind of I love. I hate the gilding, and as you'll see with another one of these decks, I have started to mod them. So my intention is to mod the gilding off of all of these. I don't like gilding. I'm not a fan. It sticks. This is cheap gilding, and it doesn't have a great feel in my hand, so I'm gonna get rid of it. But again, this is another good one that I really like the keywords on it. That's a clump that's just stuck together. Gilding. I really like the keywords on this deck. Again, the art is very very late 90s, early 2000s, and I love it. I love it because it takes me back to that time and place. I don't know how many times I can say that, beating a dead horse over here, but it's just got a great energy. It's got a great sort of old school witchy days, my old school, right? Okay, so this was the one that I think I got first, this Witch's Kitchen one. I believe this is the one I got first, but it's not the one I've modded first. I have an avalanche of decks going on. Here's the backs. Again, I hate the gilding. This one is it's so much. It's so much with the design. With the heavy photo collage, photoshopping, and all the borders. This is just overkill, but I still love it. There's some exceptions to decks like this, and this whole series is an exception for me. I want them all. It's a Pokemon thing. I'm going to be collecting them all. That is my intention. There's a new one coming out, I want to say end of this year or so, and it's already on my list. I totally plan to get it. I do like this one that it has the plant and a keyword. I've talked many times before about plant decks, herbal decks. I have a really hard time with them if they don't have a keyword because I don't know anything about the plants. And yes, I should do a plant study at some point, but who has the time? Not me right now. So I love a deck that kind of walks me through it, holds my hand. This Witch's Familiar one, this one is absolutely Krista's fault, and I adore her for that. This deck I have modified, and this is my intention to do with the rest of them. So I've trimmed the gilding off and I've re-edged it myself because it just makes it so much softer. It makes it a little bit smaller. Oh, here's the backs of this one. I'm not a huge fan of the backs of these decks. I mean, they fit with the energy of the deck and the theme, but I'm just not a huge fan. I really like this one. This one, I don't even mind the borders. I mean, they're nice. I like the colors. It feels like it sits in alignment with the energy of the deck pretty well. And this one is all, like it says, witches familiar. So it's all like animals and mythical creatures and things like that. And this just one has, again, a great energy to it. I really like the keywords. There's a couple of cards in this particular deck that I really, really love that are very unique and I don't have in any other deck. And that's always like a selling point for me. If you can do something that my 500 plus other decks don't do, then that's really cool and I really appreciate it. So this one is just another great little reader. Again, I just love working with it. My intention is to mod this entire series of decks and then I want to use them together in a reading. Krista, I keep talking about Krista because Krista and I both, we have the same feels about these decks where we just absolutely love them and we had to have them all. And Krista created a spread, and I will see if I can find it because I think she posted it on her Instagram using all of these decks, and I cannot wait to get them modded so that I can do the same because that's fully my intention with these decks. So this deck, I have been working with the Witches Familiar together, and they read really well together. This is the Tarot of Sacred Kingdoms. The backs are quite lovely. It is lovely matte gilded, which I adore. This deck for me, I've worked almost exclusively with the Witches Familiar. The two of those together, they're just magic. And I think I've shown them together in a video. It's probably in a monthly wrap up. And I really like this deck. I think it's done really, really well. It does utilize AI as a tool, meaning that the creators did have artistic input in it and did work on it. So it's one that I think is beautifully done. I really like the depictions. I love the energy of the deck. I love the way it reads. My only complaint with this deck is that sometimes the titles are a little bit hard to read, but the images are pretty like in alignment with Rider-Waite-Smith, so it's pretty easy to tell what I'm looking at, with the exception being maybe some of the quartz. Like I not necessarily, like I think there's a beautiful King of Pentacles, but it doesn't necessarily, like if I take that off, I'm not necessarily gonna know that that's a Pentacle card. But again, I really like it. And it's just got some interesting, really interesting perspectives on the tarot, I think. The Six of Cups with the seeing the reflection in the mirror, I think is beautiful. I think it's really smart. And I really enjoy working with it. It has very much a fantasy sort of feel for me. And I really enjoy that. A lot of my decks lean into those fantasy worlds. And this one definitely sits in that space. I have said many times I do not mind decluttering my collection because I grow and change as a person, and decluttering my decks is just a part of that process. I'm always happy to move decks along to new homes, but again, it's just part of the growth process of my work. A deck that worked for me a year ago doesn't necessarily work for me now, and may or may not ever work for me again, depending on if I've moved beyond that. But this deck, I think I'm pretty much decided I'm going to hold on to because it is quite unique in my collection and I really enjoy working with it. Okay, so another deck that I have sitting in this randoms basket that I was playing with for a while is this Tarot for the Great Outdoors. Here's the backs, which are lovely. I do really like the images and the depictions, and I found that I was playing with it with an oracle deck that I thought worked really well as kind of exploring sort of that idea of inner child. And you'll see with the oracle deck, I'll pull it out next. I was working with them together as an exploration of sort of inner child. So the oracle represented the inner child and this represented that outer exploration energy, which I do really like. But I don't do, here's where I'm at. I don't do a ton of inner child work in that way. And so I don't know that I necessarily need to hang on to this. And here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. If I if I'm gonna do inner child work to this point, to this end, right? The idea of, let me just, like, I know I'm all over the place, but let me just pull out the oracle. This is the Blooming Lovelies. I'm not going to get rid of this one. This one is definitely staying because it's very unique. And again, unique decks get to stay in my collection. So this one, here's the backs, have the most unique, wonderful little messages on them, like sun's out, bums out, wistful as a windowsill of yearnings. It's so fun and quirky and unique, and I really, really love the energy of this deck. It's a dance on the back of a crocodile. It's got great messages that I don't see anywhere else in any of my other oracles. They're quirky, they're fun, they're whimsical, and it's just a joy to pull out. So even though I did use these two in alignment, like we'll just do, I mean, I'm not gonna do my usual, I know, like blasphemy on my own channel, right? These two together are really great because I would use this as sort of the inner child and this is the exploration. And while I really enjoyed that practice, and it was quite fabulous, and the Blooming Lovelies is going nowhere because of those unique messages. While this was fun, this is not my preferred for inner child work. So let me real quick grab the deck that I do use for inner child work, and that is the deck I have in here, and it is the Unicorn Journey Tarot by Lisa Pepez. So this is my prototype copy, and like y'all, this is my inner child deck. I feel like I really don't need any others because I have this one. And I've talked about this, I did a whole video on it, and I talked about my own personal connection to this deck for so many different reasons, not just because it was created by my best friend, but also because it so captures my own childhood. I grew up riding horses. I had horses. I showed competitively. And so this whole deck represents that for me. It represents my childhood because Mystic begins her journey as appearing as a horse. But yet it also takes us into this gorgeous fantasy world, which is a place that I want to be most of the time. And I just like, this is just it. This is it for me. This is the inner child deck. It is probably the only one I would ever need. And I feel like anything else that kind of even comes close to this energy is probably going to pale in comparison for me. Again, not only because of who created it, but because of what it means to me on a personal level. So where I'm at with this sort of Tarot of the Great Outdoors is that I feel like, even though these are two totally different things, right? This is outdoors, this is adventure. And the thing is, this looks a lot like where I live, but I have other decks that sit in that energy too. So like here we are going this one deck. Yes, I could say it functions as inner child. It also functions as sort of representing where I live. It doesn't hit in either one of those spaces enough for me to, I think, want to keep it because it kind of serves in that function as the inner child, and it kind of serves in representing, you know, where I live. I mean, this does look like the Pacific Northwest. And like it kind of does, right? Like it kind of does all those things, but it doesn't like 100%. So like this deck 100% represents my inner child. The deck that represents where I live is the Pacific Northwest Tarot, which is literally based in the Pacific Northwest. So if I'm going to compare, you know, decks to decks here, and I didn't pull that one out because that's actually in a whole different category of animal decks for me. But if I want a deck that represents like where I live, I could go to that one. And this one, while it's great, like I really do, like that's so great. I do love it. I do love it. But I just don't know that I really need it. So like it's one that I'm kind of considering maybe needs to go into purgatory. The only difference would be like this might be one to like throw in the trailer when we're camping maybe. So that's where I'm at with that one. The Blooming Lovelies is like that. This is going nowhere. This one's just fun. It's just fun. And I feel like this is a great one that I can pull out. Like, man, if I'm having a bad day and I just need a fun message, I think this is such a great one for that. I do believe there is a tarot now. I don't have it, but I do believe there is one. So that's the Blooming Lovelies. And of course, you know, my Unicorn's Journey Tarot, like this is going nowhere. This is the Herb Crafters Tarot. This is actually the second time I've had this deck. And here's the thing with the decks like that. Okay, so I bought this deck and I was like, I'm gonna do a study because I really want to learn more about plants and herbs. The backs are beautiful. And like, this is a gorgeous deck. I absolutely love the illustrations. And now that I'm looking at this I think also feels like it would be, it's like Tarot for the Great Outdoors, but without people, which is actually my preference. I prefer decks without people because it opens it up more for me. And now that I'm looking at this, here's the thing when you declutter your collection, right? Now that I'm looking at this on the heels of Tarot for the Great Outdoors, I feel like this deck actually sits more in alignment with that kind of energy for me, and I like that it has no people. But look at the art, it's beautiful. But here's the thing, this is the second time I've bought this deck. So I bought it and I was like, I'm gonna do a plant study and I'm gonna use this deck. And then I didn't for like a year. And so I rehomed it and then I was like, okay, no, really, I'm gonna do a deck study and I'm gonna learn about plants and I'm gonna use this deck. So then I bought it again. And I still have not done a plant study. Now, part of that is just because I really just don't have time right now. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not a lack of interest. It's not I don't want to work with this deck or anything like that. It's just I do not have the time because I have multiple big projects in the works that I need to be like wrapping up toward the end of the year. And so this is just not gonna happen for me this year. And that's okay. But now I'm like, should I just keep holding it onto it? Should I maybe try again next spring? Because that was kind of always my thought process with this, is I was gonna do a spring study, Herb Crafters Tarot study, and I just never got around to it. Maybe I will do it next spring, but am I gonna be any less busy next spring? I mean, I'm kind of thinking probably not, but should I hold on to it and see if I'll like give it one more year? Like, it's so beautiful. And I think part of the thing is I'm just not ready to part with it yet, because I do absolutely love working with plant energy and I do absolutely want to learn more about plant energy. I just need to carve out the time in my life. And so maybe once I get some of those bigger projects kind of more either completed or underway, maybe next spring I will have time. So this is me talking myself into holding on to this deck for at least another year till next spring, and then I'll see if maybe I can manage to do a study with it then, because like it's absolutely gorgeous and I really want to work with it. I just need to find the time. This one was in the, probably should have specified which basket they were in. So I do have both of them just sitting next to me, so I'm just kind of pulling at random. This one was in the basket of decks that I was working with. This is the Good Omens Tarot. Oh, I love Good Omens. See, here's my thing. This is a fandom deck. So here's the beautiful backs, and I absolutely love Good Omens. Like, also David Tennant is like one of my favorite actors, and the fact that he's in that and we get to, you know, see him in this deck, I'm kind of like, I feel like I need to probably keep it, and maybe it just needs to go on my shelf of decks that are fandom decks but I don't necessarily use. Although I will say I actually really enjoy working with this deck. Here's my problem with this deck, and it's really not a deck problem. It's not a problem with the deck itself. I have not found an oracle that I want to pair this with. And because so much of my tarot work revolves around including oracle into my readings, it's not a necessity, but it's definitely something that I prefer to do. And when I can't find an oracle that really fits well, and I've tried multiples and nothing is just fitting the way I want it to with this particular deck, that sometimes gives me pause, because I'm like, that really limits how I can work with it, because I can't work with it in the way that I normally do, where I have my oracle as my focus, or sometimes my wrap up, but mainly my oracle is my focus, and then I pull my tarot around it. And I can't do that with this deck because I have not found the oracle deck that wants to pair with it. I've tried many. I think I even did playing with pairs with it, and they're like okay, but nothing stuck. So I'm at the point where I'm just like, it doesn't really work for me in the way that I tend to work with tarot. So now do I keep it? Do I continue to see if maybe at some point a deck will come along that does feel like it's gonna sit in alignment with that? And that's the thing. Then I look through it and I'm like, oh, but this and oh, but that. And there's so many, references, and it makes me think of things in the show, and still one of the shows that just like, I'm still heartbroken. If you have not seen Good Omens, watch it. And you have to watch season 1 and 2 because season 2 broke my heart, and I'm still not over it. Like in all the best ways. But anyway, I really love this deck, and I do enjoy working with it. It's a great reader. I just haven't found an oracle to pair with it, and that gives me pause because then it really limits how I can work with it. I could try maybe doing, trying to find a set of dice to work with it, because like y'all know, dice casting is a huge part of my practice now. So maybe if I found a set of dice that I felt like worked really well with it, that might be good. I'm kind of thinking I could build a set of dice, because like as I'm looking through it, if I had like a purple one, if I took a bunch of my mismatched dice and I built a set, like a purple one and a lime green one and a blue one, that would be really, really fun. And then maybe I could just use this as a deck that I would use specifically with dice casting. Then I'm not feeling like I really need to pull oracle in it. I feel like if I had the dice casting on top of it, I wouldn't feel like I'm missing anything, I guess is the point. So I think I'm gonna keep this one because like it just has such beautiful fandom energy in it for me, and like I really love anything that incorporates that kind of thing into my practice. I have no idea if the guidebook's any good, I'll be honest. Like I didn't even read it. I think I've dipped in and out of it, but I don't need it, I don't use it. Yeah, okay, so I'm thinking I just need to build a set of dice, and then I could try dice casting, because I feel like this would be a really good deck for dice casting. So definitely gonna have to try that. I'm gonna add that to my list. Okay, so in the bin of things that like I play with, this is the pasta tarot. Here's the thing, I have a gluten allergy. So me and pasta don't really get along, and I totally bought this one on a whim when I was out shopping with a friend, like at the mall. I think it was on clearance for like $5, and I was like, okay, cool, sure, I'll check it out. I do really like it. I think it's really fun. It feels very summer. I think the depictions are great in it. But I have found that for me, because I have a gluten allergy and I can't eat regular pasta, this deck almost kind of makes me sad. That's a very me thing, but it's just kind of funny how when you start layering your own personal things on top of a deck, like this is like, I can't eat that, right? But it's got some great cards in it, and I really love the depictions. They're fun, they're funky, but it's just not one that I really find myself drawn to. If I want that fun, funky energy, I have lots of other decks that I would pull out before pulling out this one. And while it was fun, I played with it a little bit over the summer, read with it a little bit, like it just kind of like just reinforces the fact that like I can't eat any of this. It's not one that I'm gonna pull out if I want fun, funky, summer, vibes. It's as cool as it is. It's not going to be one I'm personally going to pull out because of my own personal things, and I have other decks that I like better. So this one is, I think, even though I played with it, I really enjoyed it. I even made it a bag and everything. I think it's definitely going to go into purgatory because it's just not one that really works that well for me. Okay, the next one in the do I want to keep it box is the Shaman's Oracle. So this one is really unique. I played with it the month that in my fellowship practice, the month that I used like my Margaret Peterson and stuff like that. And it was really interesting paired with that. I did really enjoy it. It has a very specific energy. It has a very specific purpose, and it's very tied into a particular way of working with the cards and reading, to the point that for me personally, it really limits what I can do with the deck. And so while it was great to kind of play with and get to know and experience, it's one that I'm probably not going to keep, although I really love the archaic sort of caveman art. I love that pull into, you know, the guidance from the ancestors, but I'll be honest, ancestor energy is not something that I work with. And so I really don't find that there's much use for this in my practice in the way that I work with my cards and the type of things that I focus on. I do think it's a fantastic oracle. I really enjoyed getting a chance to get to know it. The guidebook is wonderful. I really like the artwork. I like that it's got unique suits, and it was a really interesting one to get to know, but it's just not one that fits very well in my personal practice because I don't work with ancestor energy. If I did, this sort of caveman ancestor energy would definitely be something that I would tap into, but it's just never been a huge part of my practice and my way of working with the cards. This deck, I've mentioned it before, I think, it makes me think of the Ancient Aliens TV show. It's like one of my guilty pleasures. And so I've been a little bit tempted to keep it because it makes me think of that, but that's so not really what the purpose of this deck is. And so I don't feel like that's enough of a pull for me to keep it just because it kind of reminds me of that TV show. So while it was fun to play with, it's definitely going to be one that I am moving along. It was great to experience, get to know, but it's just not one that really is going to work long term for me in my practice. Okay, so another deck in the I really want to play with it and haven't yet is the Energy Archaeology Oracle. I don't know how many times I've shown this deck on my channel and talked about it. I have worked with it a little bit. The guidebook is really, really fantastic. Here's the backs. It's lovely matte gilded. I think this deck is gorgeous. And I really enjoy the art, and I really have enjoyed the little bit of work that I have done with it. I would like to do more. So it's not going anywhere in my collection. Again, it's another one that's super unique. I do not have another deck. I mean, I have other decks that have like skeletons and things like that, but this deck is actually like the guidebook gets into body work and things like that, like working with the bones and like the energy within the body and the self. And so I really like that. I have health issues, so the idea of being able to have a deck that helps me connect with my physical self is wonderful. And again, I would like to do more with it, so it's hanging out in that basket so that I will remember that I do want to get into this more and work with it more. I haven't found a practice yet. And I think that's where I'm at with this deck is I really need to find a practice, as in something that I can do fairly regularly, repetitively, to help me work with this deck and with the energy of it and the teachings that are in the guidebook, because I think that's a big part of this deck for me, is the information that's in the guidebook. This is, again, one of those decks that it's not going anywhere because it's super unique. I don't have anything that's like it, and I definitely want to spend more time to work with it and get to know it. So I need to find a practice or cultivate a practice around this deck, and then I will be able to incorporate it more into my everyday workings. Okay, let's talk about this little sexual magic oracle. I don't know what I think about this deck, like, I'll be honest. Here's the backs. I don't know. I don't do relationship readings. This is the thing. I have been married a very long time. I do not do relationship readings anymore in terms of romantic relationship readings. And so I have played with it with my Notoria and doing like boyfriend readings and things like that. And it's fun. But like that's kind of where it ends. After a while, it felt like it almost kind of made light of, and again, this is when you're dealing with, how do I talk about this? The way that I work with that deck is dealing with the Notoria and working with it specifically with boyfriend energy. And for those of you who don't know, that's referring to a character in a video game that I play. And there's a lot of trauma in that character story. And working through that character story has helped me deal with some of my own traumas, like long story short. And so I was using the Notoria, and I was using this deck to kind of pull a card at the end. And like, it was kind of fun, but after a while, it also kind of felt like it was almost trivializing the trauma healing. And while I do actually think the deck is beautiful and I really like the artwork and the keywords are really great, I feel like that experience kind of tainted the deck for me. And isn't it interesting how when you have a reading, like, or a type of reading or practice, and you use a particular deck for it, and then after a while, like that deck becomes synonymous with that. I had the same thing happen a few years ago with another deck that I had used for some healing work. And that once I kind of worked through that healing work, I needed the deck to go because I had done the healing work. I felt like I was through the other side of it. And having the deck still in my house and in my collection felt like I was holding on to that thing that I had been through. And I feel like this deck, I feel like that's where I'm kind of at this with this deck. Again, this is a very me thing. Because I used the deck in the way that I did, and because I was working with it in alignment with a particular type of energy and work, that after a while, it felt like it was just the wrong fit. And now I feel like it kind of just trivializes that. And so I think that this is another one that like I need it to go now. Like I did some work with it. I played with it. I do think it's a fun deck. I just feel like the way that I was working with it, I did the thing. I don't like the way it really sat at the end of the day, like after I worked with it a little bit. And so I feel like it's one that just needs to go now because now it kind of, like I've tainted it. And that's, again, a very, very me thing. But I think that's an interesting conversation when we talk about like our own personal experiences with decks. Like somebody else will have a totally different experience with this deck. But for me, that's the experience I had because of the way that I worked with it. So I'm going to let this one go as a way to let that sort of negativity around that trauma healing go. And that in itself will be healing work. Okay, just a few more left here in these baskets. This one is the Fairies Oracle Deck and Guidebook. I purchased this one while I was up visiting Lisa, and I really would like to play. Will this go with, I think I've said this before, will this go with Good Omens? Maybe. This deck, I really like the artwork, and I think the keywords are great, but the artwork is really where it's at, but I really don't like the borders. I find them to be very, very distracting, so I want to cut them off and then see if maybe I like the deck a little bit better because I really like the artwork. I think it's fun and it's got a great energy to it, and I really like the keywords on the cards, but this going on the sides is so overwhelming that it's so distracting and I can't even focus what's going on in the card art, much less the keywords, because I'm so distracted by all the borders going on. So this is one that I think I just need to mod, and I need to go ahead and cut those borders off, just the two sides, because it's only on the two sides, and then just re-round the corners and call it good. You know, maybe edge it in black for fun, but I do really like the deck. I love the art. I love the keywords. It's just fun and funky. I like that it's got a little bit more of a muted color palette. I'm definitely drawn to decks that have a muted color palette because I have other like sort of fun, light fairy sort of energy decks, and this one feels like it has a bit more of that beautiful muted color palette I like, while still being colorful, right? Still being colorful and bright. In my world, this is colorful and bright. The box is like, it's kind of obnoxious. Like it's clever in one sense, but also it's kind of obnoxious. And I don't know if it's gonna work once I trim it, but it's a cute little set. I'm gonna set it aside to cut those borders off and to see if I like working with it a little bit better when I'm not so distracted by everything going on the side of the cards. Okay, so another deck in this basket, and I have got no idea why. I must have been playing with it. This is the Akashic Tarot. I have gone on an adventure with this deck over the years. Way back when it first came out, I was super excited about it. Here's the box. I pre-ordered it, I got it in, and then I realized it is not a full 78 tarot, and I was super disappointed. Because I didn't know that going in. It just really kind of ruined it for me for a while. I ended up using this deck as a base to create my own oracle just because I had it and I was like, it's fine, I'm gonna use it. Then I ended up ordering multiple copies so that all of the oracles that I were creating were on the same size, the same cardstock. Like I didn't use the art. I actually just collaged over the whole top of the card. I used it as a canvas essentially. And then After a while, I kind of came around to really kind of liking it. Do wish it had a full 78 because for me, I kind of question whether it really even is tarot for me or it is more like an oracle. And I think really at this point, the way that I work with it is more like an oracle because it does have keywords. So I tend to completely ignore the tarot association when I'm working with this deck. And I just end up focusing on the keywords or the key phrases that are on it because I think it actually works really well. And this might be one that it might be fun to actually just trim it off and maybe make it square. I think that's why I had that one. It was next to this one. So I'm guessing that my thought was to cut all of this excess off and to just actually make it like maybe more of a square oracle with just the title at the bottom and the imagery and cut off all the excess. Mods take a long time and I don't necessarily have the time to do big lengthy mods anymore, but I do still really enjoy it, and sometimes it really makes a huge difference with the deck. So I might try it with this one. I think it would be great like that because that is how I work with it anyway, and I think it would be fun to kind of curate my own oracle out of it, especially because I've been on such a roller coaster with this deck over the last few years where I've had it, I didn't have it, I liked it, I didn't like it, I collaged over the top of it, now I wanted it again, and I read with it the way it was, and now I'm like, I'm gonna mod it again. I've been on such a roller coaster with this deck that I feel like kind of taking it and making it an oracle would be a really fun experience and would just personalize that experience even more. So that one needs to go in the mod pile as well. So I'm gonna have to do a mod video at some point. This is the Dreamgate Oracle, and this is the new deck, new mass market deck by Danielle Noel. I hate tuck boxes. Okay, so like here's the thing with this deck. I think it's really beautiful. Oh, look, the portal cards on top. Here's the back. I feel like I have so many of these cards in other decks. And I think the thing with this deck is that it competes not only with the other decks that I have by Danielle Noel, but it competes with my Gateway of Light activation. Now, could you use this in the exact same way as I use my Gateway of Light activation as like a portal deck? Absolutely. And that's why I was kind of like, maybe I need to hold on to it because I love working with portal energy. However, this art feels like, and because again, it's an artist I collect, so I have all of her decks, but I kind of at the point where I feel like if I want this art, I am probably going to just go to her tarot decks, and I do have her other oracle, the ocean one. So where I'm at, I guess, is if I want this type of art style, which is very, I mean, it is very unique to Danielle Noel. We see a lot of it in sort of like other people doing similar things, but she was kind of one of the first to bring this art style into the tarot world. Not the first to do the art style. This art style has been around forever, like this kind of digital, mystical, new age, for lack of a better word, photo manipulation. It's been around forever. But she was kind of one of the first, I think, to really bring it into the tarot world and to kind of like gain some popularity and recognition with this type of artwork. And so whenever I see art decks like this, I mean, my own art style looks like this, so I'm definitely not knocking other artists that do this type of art style because I totally do it too. But now when I see it, like, it makes me think of Danielle Noel. But if I want this art style, I could go to any of the 3 or 4 tarot decks of hers that I have and the Ocean Oracle. And if I want that portal energy, I just tend to favor my Gateway of Light activation. And again, that's just, I think it's because it's just, I've worked with it so much. But it's got some truly stunning cards in it. But I'm back to that age-old question of, do I keep a deck just because there's a couple of cards in it that I really love? I think that if you are looking for a portal energy deck, this is a great one. If you don't particularly like the Gateway of Light activation, and let's just do, because I mean, we're here and I'm like going through my collection. This deck is absolutely not going anywhere. It is one of my favorite decks, and I love the portal energy that comes through, but you'll see when I flip through them together, I think we'll see that they're kind of similar. And I feel like they kind of sit in the same space, as they both feel very portally. They both feel like stepping into that sort of other worlds. Some of the images are really beautiful in the Dreamgate Oracle though. I mean, it's Dreamgate, so it is portal energy, and that's the main reason why I wanted to get it. But I feel a bit more like the Gateway of Light. It just feels a little bit more open to me, and I don't know if that's just because that's how I've used it, or because I've used it so much, or because the way I use it, or what. But I do feel like these sit in really similar spaces. And so I'm kind of like, do I need both? Will I use both? Like, I could probably find really similar cards in terms of like the energy and even maybe the depiction. I have very specific decks that I work with the Gateway of Light activation, in case, like, I think I've done full videos on this deck because it is one of my most used oracles, because I do work with portal energy. This is definitely a type of portal energy that I work with. Put that back with my fellowship decks because that's what I'm working with. I'm just like, I'm feeling like this is very portally too, but it's very muted portally. I don't know. I'd be curious to know what others think. So definitely like let me know in the comments below. It's not like on its way out quite yet because I do like the portal energy, and it's a thing I work with. I'm just curious because this video isn't long enough. Like, let's just have a play really quick. As I was flipping through this deck was coming to mind for me. I don't usually do like Oracle and Oracle together, but I'm wondering if these two might actually work interestingly together. They feel like they kind of exist in the same space and on the same frequency. That was a very woo thing that just came out of my mouth. Sometimes it happens. Like, what if I use this as like the portal activation or portal energy into the self? That might be an interesting way to work with it. I don't know. I feel like they sit in alignment with each other. Let me know what you all think. I'm kind of feeling it. It might be an interesting one to play with. Look at that. Pretty cool. All right, so maybe I will hang on to the Dreamgate for a little bit just so that I can maybe play with it with this energy archaeology. And also just, I do want to explore it as more of a portal deck. This might be more of a good like spring portal. I don't know, I'm getting spring portal energy out of this. So yeah, I haven't even looked at the guidebook. I have no idea what's in the guidebook. I do like the way Danielle Noel writes. I have her tarot book as well. I do really enjoy her writing, so that card is beautiful. Yeah, did I show you the backs? Here's the backs. I don't know, I'm gonna hang on to it because it feels very much like a portal energy deck, and I really haven't had much opportunity to play with it yet, and I really would like to. So it's probably gonna go maybe just away because it doesn't feel like it fits this season. It feels more like it's a spring energy deck. So maybe I'll put it with my herb crafter, and like not to use them together, but in the same space. If I'm gonna set this aside to maybe work with and explore and get to know in the spring, that might be a good one, looking at spring portal energy. So that's it. That's all I've got today. We cleaned out 2 baskets. I have 4 decks for certain that are in the rehome pile. I have a couple of decks that I'm like gonna just set aside because I need to work with them. I have a few that I've got just that I need to do some mods on, and so that's great. This kind of just helps me rearrange things a little bit more. So yeah, if you have any of these decks or have any suggestions for how to work with them or anything that I have talked about in this video, definitely feel free to leave it in the comments below. I always look forward to hearing what you all think about the decks and share your thoughts and feelings on them. As always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.